And I think we're live. Hello. Welcome, everyone. Let me know where you're joining from. Welcome to this live stream. I'm really looking forward to this. It's been a long time since we've done it. Like I mentioned, first of all, can you hear me okay? Is everything all right with the sound? I think, according to this, it should be good. So let me know where you're joining from. Everyone, let me know if you have any, well, what questions you have. We can dig into a lot of topics. I thought it'd be fun to do this, first of all, because we hit 3,000 subscribers, which is pretty crazy because about a year ago, there were very, very few, just I think 100 or so. So 3,000 subscribers. I think I got a message about 175,000 hours of watch time, even possible. To check that. And please let me know in the chat questions, comments, anything that is coming to mind, and especially what would be helpful for us to talk about today. Because the whole point is that this is actually helpful for you. Yeah, 175. Okay, not 1,000 hours, 175,000 views. So that's pretty incredible. Um, I thought it'd be interesting to, well, first of all, to have a bit of something a bit more interactive. So, of course, I enjoy doing videos. The videos are fun, and I always try to find an angle with something a bit different, something where I think that I'm hopefully adding something useful to the conversation, to the thinking. But of course, it's great to get the feedback. What do you prefer? What works best? What could I improve on? So please let me know about that. Of course, let me know where you're connecting from. And oops. And I got a few questions. So I thought actually I got a few questions before doing this. So I thought I'd start with one which I hadn't thought about exploring yet. So it's more personal. There was somebody who was asking me what was my path and story when it comes to healing. And so the story was that the biggest revelation was rather unusual in the sense that I was able to get myself discarded without understanding very much about how any of this worked, or the principles or the ideas. And I did that simply because during the relationship, things didn't add up, and I kept on digging. I kept on wanting to understand. I kept on wanting to make sense, basically, of oh, thank you. Thank you, I wanted to make sense of what was going on, and because I kept on digging and trying to make sense and trying to understand and being constructive and being open-minded, the other person basically just ran out of energy trying to hide the lies, because we know the way it functions is you lie one time, then you lie another time to cover the lie, and you keep lying, and things don't add up. And this was the case on multiple fronts in terms of differences, discrepancies between, let's say, announced values, behavior, and what I was actually seeing. So the person said that she had certain values and way of acting, and I saw that it just didn't add up. So I kept on asking questions. And so so on the one hand, what was happening is I kept on digging. Then of course what happens also is with these people, they're very down to earth. They look where they can get the biggest return, the biggest supply of energy for the smallest possible investment. And of course, if you keep digging and trying to understand them and trying to peel behind the mask. Oh, hi, San Francisco. Wow, must be early over there. So if you keep trying to peel behind the mask, at one point there's nothing there. There's no substance. There's no real person there. And that's why it becomes exhausting for them to keep on reinventing stories and explanations, because they can't just admit the truth. Because if they admit the truth, then all of the house of cards collapses and they are completely control freaks. As we know, as the saying says, the truth sets us free, which I really do believe. And I think that when we just say, listen, I'll just tell you the truth, like it or dislike it, this is what the truth is. You might not like me, you might not like what you're going to hear, but at least it's going to be me. When we're able to do this, to find the courage to do it, to find, there's a great book called The Courage to Be Disliked. When we're able to find the courage to be disliked, it's so mind blowingly liberating, because we're no longer trying to control how we're perceived. But with these people, they will never let go, probably because they feel that deep down inside, they will never be liked. They might have done too many bad things, or they lack the courage, or they, whatever it might be, they're reluctant to do it. So I kept on trying to understand this person because I think that's what you do in a healthy relationship. You see that there's a persona. A persona, if you're not familiar with the notion, it's a psychological notion. It's like a mask. And the idea is that when you meet someone, you don't get to know 100% who they are. So if somebody meets me, I don't show myself 100% for a few reasons. First of all, I don't know who I am 100%. I think I've got some idea, but we got blind spots. Secondly, it would be a bit much if I just showed myself 100%. So I have a persona which hopefully roughly corresponds to who I am really. So I'm assuming if somebody saw me kick a cat, they would think, that's really out of character. Maybe he isn't the person whom I thought he was. But then I might say, well, I kicked the cat because the cat was about to jump on the road and get run over by a car, so I kicked it to get the cat out of the way. That might add up. But then, you have to see if it's one or two discrepancies, it might make sense. If systematically you have too many discrepancies, it just doesn't add up. And it's exhausting to pretend to be someone we're not. We have to keep track of the lies. We have to cover lies with more lies. And so it is, if we keep digging with a person like that, the cost they have in order to maintain the supply of energy, the supply of attention, the cost increases to a point where it simply is not sustainable for them. Especially when this is, the situation A. So I was situation A. A situation B arrived where someone else was willing to give a higher amount of attention with a lower cost or no questioning. And so for them, it was a perfectly rational choice to discard the more costly source of attention for the one where, the lies hadn't been quite discovered, or the discrepancies hadn't really been noticed, and maybe the other person wouldn't be quite as annoying as it's true I can be, especially if I'm trying to understand something or make sense of something, or understand someone. In principle, if you're considering to build a life with someone, then well, you'd like to know who you're dealing with. So, because of the dynamic, this person went for the, to a certain extent, upgrade. Interestingly, this person had a history of having been abused by people in positions of power, like a former tutor when she was young. So was her narrative. And this other person that she started a relationship with was going to become her boss. So it was somebody in the same organization at a higher level, and of course there's some attraction for that. He was able to arrange that she got a better job and a pay rise, and so as a package, it's not at all surprising. What happened to me here was that I'd completely bought in to her narrative that absolutely 100% of everything was entirely my fault. And I hadn't understood the dynamics, I hadn't understood the lies. I assumed still then that she was truthful, that she had no agency, no control over what had happened to her. And so I took my part of responsibility, which was pretty much all the responsibility. And so what I did is simply some soul searching, just thinking, I have contributed to things being worse. I have been afraid of certain things. There's some things where I wished I'd acted differently, where instead of projecting fears onto her, I wished I just dug. So she mentioned horrible things that happened to her in ways that magnified them. So it's basically hyperbolically talking about the negative. Normally, and I did a video about this recently with the hyperbole, we do the hyperbole with a positive. Like, you're the best audience ever. Your comments are the fantastic. This food, this soup is the best soup I've ever had. All of that in a way to exaggerate the positive. So exaggerating the positive is just a figure of speech and persuasion. Exaggerating the negative, that is quite different. That's a figure of manipulation. And that is what she was doing. Anyway, I reviewed everything I'd done and basically realized a lot of things I could have done better. And I assumed that I had destroyed the relationship, and then figured, well, On the off chance I ever meet anyone ever again, I want to make sure when I bring something to the table, I sort of mentioned this with the idea of picnic, that I'm not bringing anything toxic. So I'll do my clearing out. I'll do my clearing out. And I got it was complicated because this was in Africa. She was in a different country. It was a country where you needed a permission to be able to go and visit. And I wanted some form of closure. So I was still giving her a lot of energy, a lot of responsibility and power. I wanted some form of closure, also because things just to me didn't add up. And I remember talking with her and going through a list of everything I was grateful for, and I wanted to thank her for all the positive things, and then everything I was sorry for. And I felt once I've done that, I've done my part. I've shown gratitude, and I've shown regret, and that's it. My part is done. And I remember it was very interesting. She said that she was very moved by that, and she asked if there was anything that I wanted her to apologize for. And I remember just thinking that's a weird question. So I just told her, well, you can apologize for anything that you think you should apologize for. The list of things she'd done wrong was massive and evident. And I remember, just said, can't think of anything. I thought, okay, that's weird. That's really strange. Uh, and by the way, for people joining us, telling a story of about my healing, let me know where you're joining from. Let me know if you have any questions, and then I'll take the questions and we can talk about that just after I finish the story. So I go and think about the situation. I think, well, that's strange. But anyway, I close the door. I close the door. I accept I destroyed the relationship through cowardice, through not knowing how to talk about things, through my own fears. I learned a lesson, very painful lesson, and I just don't want this to happen again. And I thought, well, that pretty much is that. And then, sorry, yeah, that print. Wait 1 second. Okay, that is that pretty much. Um, and then what happened was a few months later. No, two things. First of all, I had the opportunity, or she mentioned that it would be lovely to see me in person. And I said I'd like to see her, that I'd traveled, I had a present. And I thought, I said, I'd like to see you, just have a cup of coffee, give you a present. And, that's then it'll feel like we'll have complete closure. So I just got a comment that autofocus is moving a lot. And I want to see if I don't think I can change that. So hopefully not getting too seasick. So yeah, she said it'd be lovely to see you. I said, okay, all I need is for you to sign one letter, just send one letter, and I can see you. And they never got signed. And that was the first time I remember thinking, wait a minute, you say you want to see me. All I need is for you to sign a letter, send me a letter, and I can come and see you, but you're not doing it. So if you did want to see me, logically you would do this. If you're not doing it, then it seems like you don't want to see me. So it doesn't add up. That was the first time I remember thinking, this is not adding up. And then what happened was somebody I knew contacted me with a photo of, I mentioned him a few times, a Maldivian con man who one of the worst, most toxic people I've ever met, completely dishonest. And he said, do you know this person? And I, yeah, I know that person. He stole a lot of money from me. He's mind-blowingly dishonest. Like, why do you ask? And he said, well, it so happens I'm friends with his new girlfriend, and there are weird things going on. And so I gave him a debrief. I said, listen, it's my version. He probably told you another version. This is my version. Make of it what you like. And we had this conversation. Oh, hi, Nicolette. Thanks for joining. We had this conversation about how do we warn this person's girlfriend? And of course, telling her you're dating a narcissist, you're dating a pathological liar, a psychopath, of course wouldn't fly. So what I decided to do was to write down red flags of toxic behavior. And I think I started with 12. And then I was writing them, and I realized that another person, I mentioned him, this so called architect who wasn't really an architect, was sharing some of the same behaviors, and the two of them knew each other actually. And as I was doing this, I started realizing, wait a minute, these behaviors, they also apply to this woman. And that was really the eye-opening moment. And actually, when I was researching that, I watched a video, fantastic video, highly, highly recommend it, which is called Marrying Medusa. Marrying Medusa is done by this guy, I've forgotten his name, Anthony Johnson. He's a bit of a character. So put aside all of his other ideas and just view him. So he's a character. He's provocative. I find he's really amusing, but I don't take the ideas too seriously. Just put aside all the provocative ideas about politics, about society, and just view him as somebody who dissected a marriage he had with a narcissist slash psychopath. His analysis is fantastic. And I remember watching that whilst I was writing about the different traits, and the penny dropped, and I just realized, wow, I've escaped a psychopath. We can discuss what is the difference between a narcissist and a psychopath. I think it's helpful to view narcissists as psychopaths light. It's less likely they walk around with chainsaws cutting people up. But most psychopaths don't even do that. But just view them as psychopath light, people with no empathy, people who don't connect, people who don't care, people who lie, people who have no morals, who hijack human behavior in order to take advantage of other humans. And I think once we use this filter, it makes so much more sense how they behave, and even just why they behave. Like, if you think of a teak, the animal that jumps onto you and bites you and can give you Lyme's disease, is not an evil insect. It's just the way it's geared. Mosquitoes, they don't try to give you malaria. They're just mosquitoes. It's just the way they function. I think that on the one hand, so this is a weird thing where I'm sort of saying two contradictory things. On the one hand, if we paid narcissists $1 million to not act that way, they probably would find a way. However, like I mentioned in the video where I ask if I unmasked a narcissist without realizing it, this woman said, I'm not sure I'd be able to control myself even for $1 million or world peace or to save my children's life. So, yeah, maybe they can't. Maybe they can't. However, I think it's a helpful framework to have that, on the one hand, when they claim they can't help themselves, it's also a choice. And maybe it's a choice to not help themselves and not really address things. And maybe it's also helpful to view them as being, as having no agency, which also incidentally drives them crazy. When you suggest they've got no agency, they hate it. When you say, well, you're playing the victim narrative and you're not doing anything about it, so it seems like you have no agency, then they also get angry. But, they like getting angry. So this process, I sort of had largely healed before I understood about narcissists and narcissism. I'd actually worked with my therapist, who, as far as I know, wasn't really aware about narcissism. We didn't talk about it at all. And she was extremely helpful, really putting all the focus onto me. I was focusing on my responsibility, my blame, everything I'd done. Thank you. Everything I'd done wrong. And she said, she was just saying, well, how can we help you move forward? When you talk to her, what are you expecting from her? And I was thinking maybe I can record the discussion and then analyze it. And she just said, what do you want? I'm not sure that's going to be helpful. Maybe, if you have something to say it and close the door. And that was to me, that was really powerful. Learning to close the door, learning I can walk away. Even if I've done everything wrong, I can walk away and I can continue my life. I also worked with a woman who did or does Reiki, so a form of energy healing. And that was before I learned Cosmo Energy, which is much more powerful, much more powerful form of energy healing. Reiki works with one channel, Cosmo Energy, we work with hundreds of channels. And I worked with this woman, and she asked me, there are a few people who did fantastic things. She asked me this question of, when are you going to stop feeling sorry for yourself? And I was just completely taken aback. I did not want to hear that question. When am I going to stop feeling sorry? Because I felt terrible and it was horrible and I'd lost this woman, I'd lost all of this. And she just asked me, when will you do it? Decide for how long you want to feel sorry for yourself, embrace it, and then stop. If you don't stop, this is going to continue for ages. This is no way to live. You have to move on. You've made mistakes, fine. The other person is absolutely entitled to be angry about those mistakes, fine. And if she's entitled to be unreasonable, people can be unreasonable, fine. When are you going to stop feeling sorry for yourself? And that was a big slap in the face. Right? Okay, I'll give myself. Well, also because it sounds so stupid, but it's like I'll give myself another week, and then I will move on. So some of the things I did was thinking, what do I know I enjoy doing that I've lost the taste of doing? One of them was playing music. Another one was cooking. And then I wanted to get busy with things that brought meaning. And that's also coincidentally, if coincidences happen, that's when this other person contacted me about this Maldivian toxic guy, and I then put together the plan of warning the girlfriend through the behaviors and just describing them. And I thought, if we can help her, that's fantastic. The fact that it might really annoy him, well, that's sort of icing on the cake. But the main thing is avoid her getting completely screwed over by this maniac. And then it might help other people too. And that started getting a bit of traction. Uh, and yeah, so just writing this, it made me review things. I went from something like 12 or 17 up to a higher number, then ended up with like 25 red flags. And the funny thing was when I viewed this, then I started going back to other relationships I had and thinking, well, this is interesting. Not everyone has all of the traits, but most of them, well, not most of them, some of them have a high enough number of traits that it's really an issue. And it was an issue. And it could be from pushing to start the relationship too quickly, trying to get commitments too quickly, putting you down or putting me down for things that used to be fantastic, having ambiguous relationships with other people, especially with exes. And I didn't know anything about the toxicity in relationships, and I realized to a large extent some of the relationships I had when I was younger, especially the one with the woman who the thing, did I unmask a narcissist unwillingly? That's someone with whom I had a relationship between ages of like 17 and 20, 17 and a half and 20. So it was an early formative relationship that made me think, well, this is normal. This is the way women function. This is what a normal relationship is like. So it's interesting to go back and review what was our previous experience with relationships, with friends, with family, and so on. What was really helpful for me, I think, was by the time I started learning about narcissists and, well, more about psychopathy and using this filter, I'd largely done the healing. I'd largely decided to move on, to forgive myself. And I had a few things going. Well, on my side, it feels like everything is clean. It feels like I've done everything I had to do. I feel like on the other side, things aren't adding up. But it meant that I could view this with a much colder lens, and that was really helpful. Oh, and something else. I just think of this because I see this quite a bit. Something that I thought was really helpful. I was talking with someone, so not quite related, but close enough to the family, and I mentioned this thing about struggling to get validation, and she said, I, s- I get irritated when people talk about getting validation. If you know who you are, you don't need validation. You're you. If you're trying to get validation from other people, you're giving them power. And I don't think that's a good idea. And that was, to me, that was really, really eye opening. It's not what I wanted to hear, of course, because I wanted the validation and I think it's crazy and, have basically have people be on my side. But the fact that she said, You shouldn't need other people to be on your side. You know what your side is. Just listen to yourself. You have the answers inside you. That was really, really helpful. And yeah, it was interesting. That was in 2018. And then it was a few months later that I did this trip when I went to Kazakhstan and I learned the energy healing and they pulled out these trapped emotions. And everything they said was, again, you have the answers inside of you. You use your head a lot to understand, but what you need to do is feel. And if you've got the pain, release the pain, and it's going to be easier. It's going to be clearer. Yes, there are a lot of unfair things and bad people, and that's part of life. Once you learn to deal with it, it's part of life. You can try to understand it, but the main thing is understanding how to avoid it. So I think that was different in terms of path. And I think that also helped me, especially after I watched this video, Marrying Medusa. It was like, okay, now I've got the key to put two and two together and make sense of what happened. And I don't need to spend so much time watching videos to try to understand and get help. And how can I win her back? And how can I do this? How can I do that? It was much easier to just go, everything, the door's closed anyway, realize I actually don't know who the person I dated is because I realized it's a fake persona. The person I liked was a fake persona and things never added up. And they never added up because she was creating this fake persona to seduce me and triangulate data. And that's why it didn't work. That's why it was never peaceful. It was never reassured. Yeah, exactly. So that's very important. Exactly. So it's being compassionate with ourselves, forgiving ourselves, letting go, turning the page. And what was helpful was remembering there's some things I like doing, even if I don't enjoy it now because I don't feel I deserve it, to still do it. And the joy comes back. Music helped me, cooking helped me. And a lot of it was just giving, actually. Cooking for other people and inviting them, having them discover new things and share ideas. Um, Write these articles, know I was doing something for others. And I think that in these, it's sort of weird because the healing is largely about focusing on our needs. But if we don't feel like doing anything, knowing we do something for others that we enjoy, that does provide meaning. And then it's just finding, I think, the balance. Um, yeah, exactly. It's very important letting go of expectations. Expecting unreasonable people to be reasonable is likely to fail. Expecting anything from other people is often a bad idea. It's much better to observe the baseline of behavior and just see when they deviate from the baseline. Incidentally, also to lead up to, by the way, why I became probably too much for this person, I'd actually followed a course on lie detection in 2017, and then I did another course on systemic therapy. And so I was beginning to learn the tools, to ask the questions, to realize that she wasn't really that interested in solving her problems. And I was beginning to learn to decode these behaviors. So that just made me too, I guess, too pricey, to maintain. You're welcome. So let me know. Do you have any questions? And if you have any questions, let me know in the chat. And otherwise, I thought I might run you through a little bit about the behind the scenes business of YouTube. So I thought I'd mention that a bit because to me it's been fascinating. Of course, we hear about YouTubers. I don't consider myself a YouTuber. I've got a small YouTube channel. Exactly. Committing to our growth and to moving forward. Oh yeah, there's something else. Committing to our growth and moving forward. I did this video, the one with the blue one, something about the real cost of narcissists. Realizing we have limited time. We roughly have 4,000 weeks on Earth, something like that. If we live to the age of 80, maybe 5,000 weeks. The last 20 years of our life, hopefully, we're still able-bodied and able-minded, and we can enjoy that and just relax. Oh, you're welcome, KC Chiefs. Most welcome. Yeah, apparently these things are not really spoken about, so there might be a few explanations for that, but I think there's some value to this and different approach. So yeah, we've got limited amount of time. What's at stake with the healing is the amount of time we have left. So if let's assume that we count time until the age of 80 and anything above 80 is a bonus. If we're 50, we only have 30 years left. So how do we want to spend the 30 years? What percentage of the 30 years do we want to invest in doing more of the healing and so on, or would we rather just close the door and move on and enjoy the 30 years? That's really important. That to me is one of the reasons why getting the healing done efficiently and accurately and quickly and closing the door is so important. It's a bit like if you have a wound and I can disinfect it and it's going to take 10 seconds to disinfect, or you just wait and they might get infected and it's going to take you 10 days. I'd rather just disinfect it in 10 seconds and you move on with your life than you spend 10 days with pain and blood and you have to be careful. Do the right thing, do it quickly because what is at stake is time. And imagine that you turn 70 and someone says, I can give you an extra 10 years of when you were 60 to 70. How much would you pay? Probably all of your money. Imagine, however old you are, we can wind the clock back 10 years. You go back 10 years in youth and with the fun and everything, but with the wisdom that you have now. That would be powerful because between the age of, let's say, 20 and 70, that's about 50 years. So 10 years is 20% of that. And the younger we are, the more fun and more energy we have. Of course, it's, the balance. We've got more energy, but we're not as wise. Then we get wiser and we're more tired. So the time we have is so precious. The faster we can heal, the better it is. And it's important for you, important for the people around you, your friends, siblings, your partners, your children, your future children, your future grandchildren, your neighbors, your colleagues. It's really important to get this right and to get it right quickly. And this sort of taps into the YouTube business thing, which is a weird one because so the way YouTube works is once you reach 1,000 subscribers and you have 4,000 hours of watch time, you can get monetized. This is what happens when you see the ads pop up, which means that every time you watch an ad, the YouTuber gets a bit of money. This is calculated in the RPM, that's the revenue per thousand per mil, per thousand ads, and the CPM, that's the cost. The RPM is what the YouTuber gets. Now, on my channel, I get anywhere between about $5 and $8 per thousand views, which means that if I get 10,000 views, I'd be getting $50 to $80. Now, if you look on my channel, you'll see how many videos I have that did well. I have one that's at about 60,000 views. They got me a couple of $100. That was amazing. Most of the videos are well below $10, especially with the recent ones. For some reason, YouTube hasn't pushed me, and that's something else. And a few of them, it's a bit more. But basically, in the past year, so I got monetized about a year ago. I've earned about $1,000 with YouTube. So if you break that down on a per month basis, that's about $80 per month. Recently, it's more like $40 per month. So I invested half of that into this microphone to sound better, and another percentage into the audio card that's here, and more stuff with equipment and so on. I use it anyway, and I think it's important to offer you decent quality. Then also a better iPad so we can do the sketches. That gives you some rough idea. This is to say that, for some creators, YouTube is fun and it's nice to share ideas, and it's amazing to see that some people find it helpful, and that that some people make progress. And sometimes, I get a really nice comment, someone saying, I'm doing really well now, and I won't be watching any more videos, but thank you. So that's amazing. Mission accomplished. It's also important to remember that it can be big business. Someone getting 100,000 views on a video, that's about $500, $1,000. When someone posts a video every day and they're getting, even if it's let's say 10,000 views, there might be $50 to $80. That can be pretty big business. And then they might be selling courses on top of it, and so on and so forth. I think it's really important when we listen to I'll take your question in a second, Davey. Thank you. It's really important when we listen to someone, understand what the motivation is, understand how they're compensated, because that might be determining the content that's made and how it's presented. YouTube, of course, is not my main source of income. Neither is it courses or individual sessions. I've got other activities, and I prefer to keep it this way. So I'm not tempted to try to. I don't think I would be, but I'd rather be safe. And like I haven't really been pushing my course. I want to re-record my course. I can do it with better quality video, audio, visual. Also more structure. I think the course is really good. And that's also why I offer 30-day money-back guarantee. But I want to do something better before I push it. When I push it, I want it just to make sense, and finding the right price point is complex. But I think it's important when we listen to people, understand what the motivation is. There can be a lot of noise when it comes to healing. What I've seen, and this sort of ties into my first point, is I know there's a lot of noise that talks about trying to be telepaths and understand how narcissists think. Now, we can try to understand how they think and why they think that way, but that's guessing. We can observe behaviors and we can triangulate from the behaviors to see what makes sense. But of course, we might be wrong. I think it's really important to empower people to say, I don't know what your situation is. Here are tools that work for me. You try using them and you come to your conclusions. I can't come to conclusions for you because I don't know the situation. I don't know the details. I don't know the person. I don't know you. I don't know what's at stake. I don't know how the other person is going to react. I see people giving advice. Advice is only a good idea when a few conditions are met. First of all, the person knows better than you do. If they know better than you do everything about your situation, then maybe listen to them. If the second condition is met, they are well intentioned. If they're well intentioned, know better than you, maybe listen to them. But the problem is, if they're really well intentioned, they'll trust you to figure it out. People are well intentioned, trust you to figure it out. They might help you with frameworks. Try this framework. What if you see things this way? But you come to your conclusions because the only person with skin in the game in your life is you. That's really important. Anyone else who's giving advice is gambling with your life. It can be very tempting to gamble with somebody else's life because if you get it wrong, well, they pay the price. And if you get it right, you can claim all of the merit for getting it right and have them be grateful towards you. But the point isn't that. The point is, in my opinion, share ideas that make sense. Have people take the ideas, test the ideas, try to apply them and work it out. The way I view it is not so much one person is above and knows better and the other person is below and they give down the wisdom. The way I view it is we're equals. I've got ideas that you haven't thought of, maybe, and you've got ideas I haven't thought of. But even if you don't have any ideas that I haven't thought of and I just give you my ideas, you test them and we discuss it. What is your observation? Does it work? Does it not work? And we think together. We equals. And there's some things I'm more competent at than you are, and many things you're more competent at than I am. And when it simply comes to, well, for example, knowing your life, you know your life. I don't know your life. I don't know you. I don't know your situation. I don't know the values. I don't know that. But I can share with you ideas that make sense for me and that help you, or might not help you, but you can try and use and see if it helps you move forward. So when it comes to some of the approaches, I understand hoping to get a solution, hoping to get an answer, hoping that someone out there has got everything figured out. But that hope, that hopium, usually is a symptom that someone has been abused or will be abused in the future. And it's easy to feed it, and I think it's dangerous to feed it. I think it's so important to give people the power back. Like I mentioned before, instead of looking for closure, to say, you choose when you get your closure. You'll decide. Yeah, you got some things wrong. Everyone does. And the other person has every right to be completely unreasonable if they want to. Fine. Do you really want to build a life with an unreasonable person? If you do, you'll find another one. And if you don't, well, then, up your game. Yeah. That's a few thoughts about that. And yeah, like I was saying, it's important, I think, to understand people's motivation because I think that determines the content, and it also helps us understand what filter we can use. We can view the filter. We can just take a step back from the content and think we cherry pick what is helpful for us and we leave the rest aside. It's important to, I think, to really be able to take a step back and think, how does this resonate with me? As opposed to maybe someone else has got the solution. At least that is if we want to move forward and we want to avoid the cycle going on again and again. For anyone joining us, let me know if you have any questions. I'm just going to take some of the comments here. So, indeed, closing the door is very important and thinking we have a limited amount of time. This is terrifying and scary and sad. But you know what? Once you accept that, life becomes mind blowing because we realize what's at stake. What is at stake is our life. Other people's expectations? Fine. They want expectations? Okay. How's that working out for them? That's their problem. If their expectations aren't reasonable, it's their problem. If their expectations are reasonable and we fall short, okay, so be it. We can choose to change, but it helps us live with much less fear and without the fear of being disliked. So, Davey, you asking, do you think the parent epidemic narcissism we hear about is real? Do you think generally worse now than, say, 40 years ago? What might be the reason? Okay, excellent question. Yes, definitely. I think it is more apparent than 40 years ago. 40 years ago was 1982. And I don't know how old you are, but I sort of remember 1982. And I think that a few things have changed the past 40 years. People were less connected 40 years ago. There was a lot of toxic behavior that was not accepted and not tolerated. We've sort of gone to one extreme of we can tolerate anyone doing anything provided they find some kind of justification for it, and that's why we get so much more, online bullying. We get, crowds, mobs of people demanding the heads of people they disagree with, and in those crowds, you've got a disturbingly high percentage of psychopaths and narcissists who especially egg other people on. So there's been more of a spread of it. There are a lot of toxic ideas that have spread, a lot of toxic ideas, like highly toxic ideas from the 1970s that were fringe in the 1970s have become mainstream. It's ironic because the people don't know the origin of those ideas. A lot of them are French thinkers, authors, philosophers who are known in France to being weirdos is not the right term, but child abusers, child molesters. They fought a law in France to have an age of consent because they said, well, why would we deprive children of the pleasures of the body? And it's just insane. Those ideas have spread. Those people were unhinged. And I think it's really important when we get ideas from people, understand, did those people create the ideas in a happy place or in a place of misery and anger and revenge and resentment? And were they unhinged? I think reading the ideas is helpful. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Reading the ideas is helpful. A friend of mine was reading Mein Kampf and said it's really fascinating to read because a lot of ideas are very reasonable and all of a sudden it goes insane. And I think that's really important to remember when we deal with crazy people. It's like they serve you an apple pie with a broken glass in it. So we don't deny there's apple in there, but there's also broken glass. And they're okay serving you the apple pie with broken glass. My point of view is simply if someone doesn't care about the broken glass or puts broken glass into an apple pie, I'm not touching it. I only eat apple pie when I know the person has been extra careful to have no broken glass. And if I find broken glass, they take it away, they apologize, and they bake another one, as opposed to thinking they can fish out a few bits. That's my point of view. I think that's one point. I think also a number of, let's say, borderline toxic traits have become significantly more accepted. There's been I think, a massive race to the bottom in terms of decency between people, um, a lot of competition where the most toxic behaviors give short-term gains. I think long-term it's catastrophic for pretty much everyone involved. So yeah, I've seen that being being different, and then also this is something else that's rather amusing. When it comes to online dating, I think that's been a terrible factor for everyone, largely for women. Well, let's say it's been a terrible factor for most men, pretty much all women, and a small minority of men are sort of enjoying it. And one of the reasons for that is we used to meet people through common friends. So we had to behave a certain way, and there were certain toxic behaviors that are not acceptable. Now, with the sort of swipe and dump culture, it's much easier to behave in a horrible way and just move on and block and ignore the person. And if someone's been the recipient of that, to have that affect their own behavior and think, I've been badly treated, therefore, why would I risk anything? Or I will get my revenge, or I will close my heart. And because more relationships start without the social pressure of, you're dating my sister, so you better be careful, or we know the families, we know the different people. Because that's no longer the case, I think it's much easier for unhealthy behaviors to be viewed as normal or acceptable or standard. And I think that's having much, much more of an impact than we can possibly imagine. And then also, yeah, people spend less time getting to know each other. Things used to be significantly slower. Now there's much more short term, immediate gratification. And I think that doesn't bring out the best of people. I think it's a bit like we all have some levels of toxicity inside of us. And it's like society has got some ingrained immune system that stamps out the toxicity as we grow older. We learn to deal with frustration. We learn to deal with not getting our way. We learn to deal with unpleasant people and ideas we don't like. We learn to deal with it and grow up. But it seems that because it's so easy to just turn away from frustration and unmatch or block people or mute people or unfriend people, it's a strong temptation to do that instead of stop and pause and reflect. Uh, I know, incidentally, that when we stop and pause and reflect, that's when we can really develop a very strong, how do I call it, sort of emotional or cognitive immune system. When we stop and pause and reflect and we take everything that happens and that is said extremely seriously, we can actually analyze it and think, does this actually have any weight? When you criticize me this way, does it have any weight? It's not easy to do if you're prone to self criticism. If you're watching this, I assume you are to some extent. I know I am to a large extent. And this is why when we have the keys to deconstruct the criticism, it's significantly easier to stand up for ourselves. So, for example, if someone criticizes us in a relationship or at work, to just ask the question, it seems like you've been thinking about this for a long time. How come you've waited such a long time to tell me about it? It's a fair question. If something bothers you, I'd much rather, and we're friends, I'd much rather you tell me immediately rather than you keep it and it pents up and it grows and grows and grows. There's shared responsibility slash blame in every circumstance. If we're able to view it that way, it becomes a bit more constructive. Maybe the person didn't know how to express it and they can apologize. But maybe also the person is just making it up to wind us up. That might also be the case. I think that taking the situations, pondering about them, analyzing them, and then thinking, well, what would be a reasonable way to approach it? I think that makes us significantly more resilient and more resistant to manipulation, toxicity, and also sometimes just observe. If we start guilt tripping ourselves, or somebody guilt trips us, or puts all the blame on our shoulders, or we feel that everything is all our fault, that's a red sign we've been manipulated. People who talk about typically, guilt or blame or fault, or use simplistic structures. If we can see the simplistic structures, it's much easier to go, wait a minute, I see what you're doing. This is what you're doing. What you're doing doesn't work. So even without going into the argument that you're making, the way you're approaching this problem is a problem. It helps us take a step back and avoid getting well tripped and manipulated. Yeah. So there's a few thoughts. Let me know, by the way, if anyone else has got any questions, anything you'd like me to talk about. Be very happy to take that. I give you, by the way, a sneak preview of another video that I'll be releasing soon. So I recorded a few of them recently. I changed the way I've been working, and this is a really interesting one based on the book called Six Thinking Hats, and it talks about different ways we can think. So in the very short version, imagine you're wearing a hat, and each hat, so 6 different colors, and each of them is a way of thinking. So one of them is, hi Christian, I just finished this and I'll take your question. One of them is about data, another one is about emotions, another one is about positives, another one negatives, another one is creativity, another one is process. You've probably noticed sometimes you say, hey, we could do this, it would be fun, and someone is just being negative. It can be really helpful to take a step back and go, well, everything you say about the negatives is right. How about we talk about the positives first? And once we've talked about the positives, we talk about the negatives. Or, okay, let's talk about the negatives. Now we've done that. Do you see any positives? When we know that we're on the same page, wearing the same hat, it can really, really reduce disagreements. Um, okay, so Christian, epidemic narcissism, online dating is one thing that let it grow. Do you think red pill can do something about it? It's a tricky one. I think the whole red pill community is a case of, well, I mentioned that this guy before, Anthony Johnson, he's in the red pill community. There's some interesting things and some things that are not particularly constructive. I think with any kind of community, it's a good idea. Have a look, see what seems relevant, filter out what doesn't seem relevant. Don't take things at face value. Also, when you look at people, try to look at their face. If you see expressions of anger, contempt like that, or disgust when they're talking, take everything they say with a grain of salt. There's some other creators who talk about the same sort of things. When you see them talk, if you turn off the sound and you look at them and you think, what are they feeling? Or how do they seem? If they don't seem like happy people, they probably are not happy people. And it's a wise idea to not spend too much time listening to people who are not happy people. Now, with the red pill community, I think a few things are helpful to sort of gain awareness and to see some of the tricks. But at the same time, I think it's oversimplistic. It can produce somewhat cynical outcomes. And I outcomes that are cynical to me reflect a toxic thought structure. It doesn't mean everything is bad in it. It means that it's been pushed to an extreme that's toxic. It's sort of the counterbalance to people who say, look, all men have done this or men have done that kind of thing. It's overly simplistic. It might be hyperbole, but then it's better to call it hyperbole. I think if we can avoid the cynicism and we can avoid the bigotry of labeling people a certain way, but sort of take a step back and view the humanity in people, well, we might be really pleasantly surprised by how many people actually are decent, but don't know how to release the toxicity. But they'd like to, deep down inside. It's yeah, it's a tricky one. I think being aware of the toxicity and not playing to it is really important. So there's something I see that, by the way, trick for any relationship with or to avoid toxic people, slow it down in the beginning. Toxic people love to jump into bed as quickly as possible because that creates a very strong bond between people, and it's easy to manipulate someone after having been intimate. It's much harder to manipulate people when you meet up on a regular basis, having a coffee, going for a walk, getting to do activities together. If people aren't willing to slow down when you ask to slow down, there might be a bit of a red flag. And this is it's amusing because we expect women to say to ask for this. When men ask for it, it can be very amusing to see which women think, "Wow, that's really refreshing," and which ones get really angry and think, "That's not the way I want to do it." If we do it slowly, how will I ever be able to get my hook on you? It's amusing to observe. I think slowing it down is helpful, simply also because it's much easier to stop seeing someone after having had coffee twice than it is after having spent a moment of intimacy. We think much more clearly before intimacy, um, and I think that's a easier way to filter out the more toxic people, the more toxic elements. So it seems safer to slow things down a bit this way. Okay. Are there any other questions? In terms, by the way, of the channel, so I changed the logo of the channel before I had a photo of myself, and I thought I don't really want it to be about me. It's more about the ideas. I'm trying to see how to rebrand in a way that makes sense, but it takes a lot of time and thinking. Um, I don't know to what extent the oh, hi Sandy. I don't know to what extent the YouTube algorithm has been pushing or showing my content, but I know that a few people have said they haven't seen many of the recent videos. So if you want to look at the notification or hit the notification bell, look through the videos and see if YouTube showed it. And sometimes if you watch a few videos in a row, YouTube understands you like the channel, it shows it a bit more. So if that's something that you'd like to do, then it might be pushing the channel a bit more. And if you've got other things to do, watch cat videos, that's cool. That's fine. I thought I'd mention that. So, how do you get around narcissist holding our shared friends and family hostage? Yeah, okay. That requires a drink of water, and that's a tricky one. This is really tricky. So, sometimes we just have to accept that we let go. There's nothing to be done. Other times, it can be really weird when it's a sibling or a common friend. I think what's really important is remember with like reverse psychology, don't try labeling them. Mention the behaviors. So you can say, for example, I feel uncomfortable when this person does this. People might say, well, you shouldn't, but you do. And you talk about the behavior. You're not saying the other person's toxic or they're manipulating. You just talk about the behaviors. And you talk about how you react to the behaviors. I think that's the best way of doing it. And it could also be, it's important to remember systems like balance. So if there's a toxic person in a family or a group of friends, the system is tolerating their toxicity. And if someone reacts, that creates imbalance. So if you are the one creating the imbalance, then the system is likely to turn to you as being the cause of the problem. You can try to say that they are the cause of the problem. There might be some kind of resistance. Sometimes what you have to do is what we have to do is simply walk away and go, when this happened, I wasn't okay with it. Um, and sometimes it just, depends on the situation. That's why it's very important. But sometimes it's sort of, I don't like saying call people out, but rather address the behavior. So I was thinking about this. Tell you another story. Some years ago, I went for a dinner that a friend was organizing, and she had half a dozen friends, might be 6, 8 people. And during the course of the dinner, I mentioned that I used to have cold sores often. And after doing a treatment of homeopathy, I had cold sores significantly less frequently. And one woman at the table who was, I think, a pharmacist or biologist or had something to do with medicine, started attacking me, like aggressively attacking me, and saying, things like, that is ridiculous. Homeopathy doesn't do anything. Look what happened to Steve Jobs. It's because of people like you that he died, and so on. And it's just the onslaught was brutal, was violent, was uncalled for. Everyone was ill at ease. And I was, I started initially. I started. So this was years ago. Initially, I started having a conversation, um, explaining things and saying, there's something I find rather fun with homeopathy because, believe in it or not, those who don't believe in it say nothing has more impact than something. because they say the something is so small that nothing has more impact than something. In other words, it's the placebo effect. Like, it might be the placebo effect, but placebo effect means that nothing has more impact than something, even if the something is minuscule, which to me just doesn't seem logical. I don't have an explanation, but I'm more rational in the sense I'll observe and I see what the results are. If I see results, I see results. I don't have to understand the logic. I'm really focused on the results. So anyway, she was she was ranting and raving, and at one point, I figured out how to crack this egg and sort of take a step back and just said, it's weird because I told you that I used to have cold sores often, and I told you I have them less often. You could have said, good, I'm happy for you. Congratulations. I don't know if homeopathy helped, but it's a good thing that you have fewer cold sores than before. Because, by the way, I'd never said that I was recommending that people try homeopathy. I said it worked. I'd had apparently good results, but, you know, that's it. If someone tells me they've got cancer, I won't say, go and try homeopathy. Uh, I might say, do your cancer treatment. And maybe if you do homeopathy on the top, in the worst of cases, it changes nothing. So it's sort of, there might be an advantage, but there's no disadvantage apart from, $5 or $10. So it seems worth it to me. So I said to her, you could have been happy for me, but instead you've been attacking me for things that I never said, I never believed. You're projecting things onto me, but it strikes me as being weird that instead of just being happy, you're trying to pick a fight when our friend has organized a dinner and everyone else is looking very uncomfortable. And that completely shut her up. I was lucky. I was lucky that it shut her up because it could have probably gotten pretty ugly. I think I also said something along the lines of, we could simply leave it as at the point where, um, first of all, you've accused me of saying things and thinking things I never said and never thought. So that's why you're getting angry. That's not acceptable. We could blame it on the alcohol, that you had too much to drink, and I'm willing to do that. Just say it's because of the alcohol. Um, but I don't understand why you would wish ill health on someone that you don't know. So I reframed it as being a health issue. That shut her up, but then I just walked out of there thinking I never ever want to see this person again. Um, and it was really important, by the way, Sandy, here is if we're willing to walk away, we have power. As long as we're not willing to walk away, other people have power. And sometimes the right thing to do is just tell the friends and family, listen, I love you dearly. I really don't enjoy being around this person. Every time this kind of thing happens, I don't want to suffer this anymore. So I'm happy to hang out with you and see you, but not with this person around. I'm really sorry. I've done my best to avoid conflict and confrontation. They're always provoking me. I really don't like it. You can also take, by the way, an image, because I'm just thinking of a group of friends where one guy was systematically picking on another one in just the meanest way possible. And I met up with a few of them, and oh, hi, Alpha Male Army. Um, cool you joined. And I just labeled it as being, that guy who picks on others? He's basically Eric Cartman from South Park. And everyone just burst out laughing. And it's like, yeah, he's the horrible, like toxic guy who picks on everyone just because he's mean. He's Eric Cartman. So sometimes just labeling it that way of going, this might sound exaggerated, but when this person's around, I feel like we have Eric Cartman in the room and I don't like it. And that's it. It's my choice. My choice is not be around them. If you invite them, I won't be there. I'm sorry about this. I wish it was not this way, but that's the way it is. And then we can respect their choice. We might have to lose some friends, but if that's the case, maybe they weren't really friends, and maybe they're being flying monkeyed, and it can be a bit easier if we talk about specifically the behaviors. Like with this Cartman guy, I told someone else, listen, every time he's around, I see him pick on the person who's got the lowest self-esteem. I don't like that. So I understand you want to invite him, but I don't like it, and I don't like bullies. So far, I didn't say anything, but next time he does it, I am going to say something that's going to get ugly, and I don't want that to happen. So that's that. But of course, you calibrate to your situation, to the people that you know. Again, it's your life. That's it's your skin in the game. in your life. So I hope some of that is helpful. I take some of the Christian wrote back. I don't think about the game, about the old behavior between men and women. Some of these come together. Narcissism made me wonder. Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. I think there's a lot to be said to slowing things down. I think that by accelerating things, remember that's one of the first traps of narcissists is start the relationship too quickly. Try to get into bed too quickly. When they're in bed, tell after having gone to bed a few times, saying they're developing feelings, that they've never felt this before, that they're really in love, that talking about marriage and children too quickly. When it feels rushed, it's a bad sign. And they hate not, they want to control the dynamics. They want to control where it's going and the speed at which it's going. If you slow it down, if you slow down the dynamics, then you frustrate them. And the healthy people are more likely to enjoy it, and the toxic people are more likely to get frustrated. It's a bit like, imagine you've got 3 cafes, and you've got a Cartman type character who knows that if they're annoying enough, one of the 3 cafes will eventually give them free coffee. And they just go between the 3, and they're as annoying as they can be until they get the free coffee. And they got it, they're happy. So the next day, they go back to the first cafe, the one that gave them coffee because they were annoying, and they keep being annoying until that cafe decides, we can't keep giving free coffee to this idiot, and he's annoying everyone else and scaring away every other customer. And then what do? Well, they tried the other cafes. They probably tried them anyway just to make sure they have a backup plan. So yeah, I think it's helpful to not give in to the annoying people. Yeah. Okay. Listen, we've done. Wow, can't believe it's 17 of you. Thank you so much for joining, for coming. We've done just over an hour. If there's any other question, I'll take one last question. But also, let me know in the comments. Did you find this helpful? Would you like me to do more of these? And then with the, oh, welcome, Sandy. With the videos, are there any specific videos that you thought were helpful that you'd like to see more of? Let me know. So either you can do that now in the chat, or you can do it in the comments of this video. But I'm happy to take one more question if there's any other one. And by the way, I really appreciate all of the comments. As you see, I read and I think I reply to pretty much every comment, at least the ones that I see. But I've gone through that. When it was September, October that I had a huge push from YouTube and got a lot of views, a lot of new followers. Yeah, thank you, Davey. And since then, it got really quiet. Things got quiet in October, November. I think it was October, November for sure, November, December. And then I had illness in the family that really recalibrated things. Hence the video about what's really at stake. Something also to think about. As I spoke about before, we've got limited time. We've got even more limited time with our loved ones, and they're getting older. And once they're older, they don't get younger at all. So that's really important to remember. So yeah, I think I probably did videos that were not quite calibrated, or for some reason YouTube stopped pushing, or maybe I think I heard that some other channels were piggybacking off some of the more popular videos. I guess I haven't done too much of the keyword optimization or things like that. But yeah, when I read the comments, it's heartwarming to see that people find this helpful. And it's a pleasure to do. So like I mentioned, it's not been financially that's not the main motivation. It's always nice, but the main thing is seeing the views and seeing that, about if about 500 people watch a video, that's really pretty awesome. And well, I remember the time when I was just one of the however many 100,000 people, but videos really helped me. So that's a big motivator. Okay. Well, if there's nothing else, thank you so much for joining. Let me know in the comments afterwards if you'd like to have more of these, if this was helpful. And yeah, thank you very much. And yeah, of course, if you haven't, oh, that's really, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Alpha Male Army. Thank you. That's very kind of you. I really appreciate that. So yeah, I'm happy that you, first of all, there's an ex relationship and that you understand it better. There's, I think with the right keys, it's significantly more helpful. Oh, hello, Jean-Antoine. Oh, that's very kind of you. Thank you so much. Yeah, you're most welcome. Most welcome. I'm very happy that people are finding it helpful. You know, I know that behind every viewer, every number, there's one person, just as I am. So it's always heartwarming when I see that people, yeah, find something of value in there. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for watching, for commenting, and yeah, for dropping by. So yeah, let me know if, like I was saying, let me know if you like to, if it'd be helpful to do more of these. Maybe I would do something like 3 videos per month plus a live, but maybe I can do a few more. I'll see. I'll try to get into the right rhythm for doing it. Um, but yeah, thank you. And thanks a lot for the feedback. I really appreciate it. And I hope everyone is doing well. Hope everyone takes good care of yourselves. And remember this, all of this is the path to healing that you're on is much more important than we can imagine. It's not just about you, but also all of your loved ones, your colleagues, your friends, your children, your parents, your siblings. It's really important. So keep up the good work. Thank you. We're all in this together. Take care. Thanks. Thanks, Em. Thank you.